Okay, so deep beneath the desert sands of Egypt, there's a vault. But this isn't some pharaoh's tomb, and it's not a temple. It's a place that holds a mystery so deep, it literally challenges everything we think we know about the ancient world. Let's dive into the enigma of the Serapeum of Saqqara.
So you have to ask yourself, what on earth is buried down there in this underground labyrinth? As you go down into the darkness at Saqqara, you come face to face with something that just feels, well, completely out of place. It's an anomaly that defies its own time and maybe even ours.
Hiding down there in these perfectly carved alcoves are 24 of these. I mean, look at them. Massive, monolithic boxes, each one cut from a single solid block of extremely hard stone. 24 silent giants, just guarding their secrets for millennia.
Now, to even begin to understand this riddle, we've got to start with the official story. And it all begins with its rediscovery back in the 19th century and, well, a finding that absolutely nobody saw coming.
So picture this. It's 1850. A French archaeologist named Auguste Mariette is out in the desert hunting for the lost temple of the Serapeum. He stumbles on a sphinx's head poking out of the sand, then another, and they lead him to this buried entrance. He lights a torch, heads down, and finds himself in a colossal underground complex.
The mainstream theory at the time, and it's still what you'll hear today, was that these massive boxes were sarcophagi for the Apis bulls. These were sacred animals the ancient Egyptians worshipped. And hey, on the surface, that seems like a pretty logical conclusion, right?
Mariette was completely convinced he was about to open these giant boxes and find the mummified remains of sacred bulls. But after this incredible effort to pry open lids that weighed over 30 tons apiece, what he found inside was something else entirely.
Yep, every single one of them was empty. And this was the first huge crack in the official story. I mean, these impossibly huge, complex containers weren't even being used for their supposed purpose. So the questions started piling up. What were they for? And maybe more importantly, how in the world were they made?
And that question of how, well, that's where this mystery goes from strange to downright impossible. The boxes themselves present this staggering problem of physics and engineering that we're still grappling with.
So each box, right, with its lid, weighs up to 100 tons. Now, to put that into perspective for you, that's like trying to move around 15 full-grown elephants, all welded together. How do you even begin to work with something that massive?
And here is the absolute kicker. The boxes are carved from granite and diorite. These are incredibly hard stones. The tools the dynastic Egyptians had were mostly copper, which is super soft. It's like trying to carve a block of steel with a plastic spoon. The spoon is going to break, not the steel. It's a complete technological mismatch.
Oh, and as if carving them wasn't hard enough, this stone wasn't even local. Nope, the quarries for this type of granite are all the way down in Aswan, which is over 500 miles away from Saqqara.
Just try to wrap your head around this process for a second. First, you have to somehow cut a 100-ton block out of a mountain. Okay, then you transport it 500 miles. Then you have to lower it into a narrow tunnel, navigate it around these tight 90-degree corners in the dark, and place it perfectly. Modern engineers today look at this and say it would be a logistical nightmare, even with all of our technology.
But hey, let's just pretend for a minute they somehow solved all those logistical problems. That brings us to what might be the most baffling part of this entire mystery, the mind-boggling and what seems to be totally unnecessary perfection of their construction.
So, a manufacturing expert named Christopher Dunn actually took modern high-precision measuring tools down into the Serapeum. And when he placed a precision straight edge against the inner walls of a box and shone a bright light behind it, he found something incredible. Absolutely zero light passed through.
So what does no light actually mean in engineering terms? It means the surfaces are perfectly flat to within 2/10,000ths of an inch. Let me be clear. This is a level of accuracy that is flat out impossible to achieve by hand. And it's not just the flat surfaces. The internal corners are perfect 90-degree angles too.
Look, this isn't the kind of precision you get from just hitting a rock with another rock for a long time. This is the kind of precision we strive for today when we're making things like optical lenses or calibrating aerospace parts. It requires advanced machinery that, according to our history books, just did not exist back then.
And this brings us to the ultimate question, doesn't it? Why? Why would anyone go to these insane lengths to create this level of geometric perfection on the inside of a box, only to seal it up and leave it in a pitch-black tunnel forever? It makes no sense for a burial, It serves no obvious function at all.
So the mainstream explanations, the ones that involve lots of time and rubbing sand on things, they just really struggle to account for this degree of precision. And this has led some researchers to a pretty radical alternative theory, that what we're looking at is forgotten knowledge from a lost chapter of human history.
See, the common argument you always hear is, well, the Egyptians just had more time and more people. Here's the thing. Time and manpower do not explain technology. You can give 1 million people 1 million years with nothing but spoons, and they will never, ever dig a tunnel through a mountain. You need the right tool for the job.
So what's the alternative? Well, this theory suggests there's a huge gap in our historical timeline. What if the dynastic Egyptians, the ones we know from history, what if they didn't actually build these boxes? What if they simply found them? Relics inherited from a much older, more technologically advanced civilization that existed in that big question mark period.
This idea is often called the precursor civilization theory. It basically suggests that a society with a really deep understanding of physics, engineering, and manufacturing existed a long, long time ago, but their knowledge was lost to time. Now, it's controversial for sure, but for a lot of people, it's a hypothesis that fits the physical evidence way better than the conventional story.
And that's really where we are today. The Serapeum isn't just a fun puzzle for archaeologists, it's a direct challenge to our neat, tidy, linear timeline of human progress.
Let's just be really clear about what this means. The very existence of these boxes, with their impossible weights, their impossible material, and their impossible precision, it strongly suggests that our understanding of the past is incomplete. They are, quite literally, a 100-ton piece of evidence that our history book is missing a very, very important chapter.
When you stand there in the dark, next to a perfect block of granite that we could barely replicate today, you can't help but wonder. We always assume we're the pinnacle of human achievement. But the Serapeum, it forces us to ask a really humbling question. What else have we forgotten?